Good everyone, my name is Pamilerin Jacob. I'm here for an episode of Poems I Love by Servio Gbadamosi. I'll be reading three poems that have really been important to me. Three to four poems. So I have a document where I read a couple of poems that I encounter that have helped me one way or the other. So the poems I want to read, they're not necessarily poems that say we're talking about stylistic difficulty or something like that. It's more poems that, by the title, poems that I love. So the first one is Invitation by Mary Oliver. Invitation by Mary Oliver. Oh, do you have time to linger just for a little while out of your busy and very important day for the goldfinches that have gathered in a field of thistles for a musical battle to see who can sing the highest note or the lowest or the most expressive of mirth or the most tender? Their strong blonde beaks drink the air as they stride melodiously, not for your sake or not for mine, and not for the sake of winning, but for sheer delight and gratitude. Believe us, they say, it is a serious thing just to be alive on this fresh morning in this broken world. I beg of you, do not walk by without pausing to attend to this rather ridiculous performance. It could mean something. It could mean everything. It could be what Rilke meant when he wrote, "You must change your life." By the way, I didn't pronounce Rilke well because I don't know. You know that thing they say about when you read the person's name in text and you don't care how they pronounce it in real life. That's just how I'm doing it. So for this particular poem, it calls for me a certain serenity that when I encountered the poem, I was searching for. And when she says that you should pay attention, and I like that the poem ends with "You must change your life." It's just, she's talking about the birds, all that they're doing, the invitation of nature to invite you to pause. And then I just love that the last line says, "You must change your life." She's talking about a whole different thing. She's just meditating upon the world, telling you how serious it is to be alive, by the way. And that time I did not want to be alive, sorry. TMI, but so that was very important for me to hear. And then she ends with "You must change your life." And I did need to do that. And I'm trying my best to do that. And I think we should all do that. That's what poems call us to do. We need to change the ways that we think, ways that we interact with the world. So that's the first poem. So the second poem I'm going to read is by Derek Walcott. It's from his collection Midsummer. So the way the poems in the book are arranged, they are serialized 1, 2, 3 up to the final poem. So this is poem 38, Midsummer by Derek Walcott. A trembling thought no bigger than a hurt wren swells to the pulse beat of my rounded palm, pecks at its scratch marks like a mound of dirt, oval wings strumming like a paneled heart. Mercy on thee, wren, more than you give to the worm. I've seen that pitiless beak dabbing the worm like a knitting needle into wool. The shudder you give, gulping that limp noodle, its wriggle of completion, like a seed swallowed by the slit of a grave. Then your wink of rightness at the wren's religion. But if you died in my hand, that beak would be the needle on which the black world kept spinning on in silence. Your music as measured in grooves as was my pen's. Keep picking on in this vein and see what happens. The red skeins would come apart as knitting does. It flutters in my palm like the heartbeat thudding to be gone, as if it shared the knowledge of a wren's elsewhere, beyond the world, ringed in its eye, season and zone, in the radial iris, the targeting stare. Okay. Okay, so the reason I love this poem so much is because it starts with, let me read the first line again. A trembling thought no bigger than a hurt. That line break is magnificent. I love that line break so much. Then a hurt wren swells to the pulse beats of my rounded palm. There's so many things happening in this particular poem, and I just love the density of the language and the tenderness of it. Walcott has a way of talking about ordinary things in extraordinary ways. There's a line where he says the prose of sunlight. And when he's describing, say, the grasses as paragraphs, I think there's this, he just plants a certain distance between, what's so familiar that you know already about. And I just can't help feeling when I come to a Walcott poem, like I need to better articulate my words in a poem. There's just that's just how I can put it. Because for this particular poem now, it starts with a wren. It's just a simple observation that is expounded upon. And Oliver, okay, I'm back to Oliver. Now, Mary Oliver says, like, undivided attention is prayer, right? So for me, this particular poem feels like a prayer, even though that was not the intention. I don't know. Well, Walcott also talks about how, for him, the writing of poems is a sort of ritual. So I see this particular poem as an epitome of that, the peak of that. And that's why I love that particular poem. So the next one I'll be reading, I hope I've not taken too much of your time. Next one I'll be reading is Eating Alone by Lee Young Lee. Eating Alone by Lee Young Lee. I've pulled the last of the year's young onions. The garden is bare now. The ground is cold, brown and old. What is left of the day flames in the maples at the corner of my eye. I turn. The cardinal vanishes. By the cellar door, I wash the onions, then drink from the icy metal spigot. Once, years back, I walked beside my father among the windfall pears. I can't recall our words. We may have strolled in silence, but I still see him bend that way, left hand raised on one knee, creaky, to lift and hold to my eye a rotten pear. In it, a hornet spun crazily, glazed in slow, glistening juice. It was my father I saw this morning, waving to me from the trees. I almost called to him until I came close enough to see the shovel, leaning where I'd left it in the flickering, deep green shade. White rice steaming, almost done, sweet green peas fried in onions, shrimp braised in sesame oil and garlic, and my own loneliness. What more could I, a young man, want? Okay. Wow. I must confess the personal connection I feel with this particular poem, Lee Young Lee's poem, Eating Alone. I can identify so much with it because of something that happened in my own life. And when I'm reading how he talks about his father, how he talks about the loneliness, I think that poetry, beyond being a measure of attention, beyond being prayer, it should also, it has a tendency to connect people across space and time. So whatever he was going through, he didn't know my dad. I don't know his dad, right? But reading this poem, it felt as though he was writing it for me particularly, yeah? And there's a tendency to get carried away by wanting a poem to be difficult, to express difficult emotions. Certain poems express difficult emotions in ways that, say, people would consider not difficult. And I think the ability to do that and not alienating, a bulk of the audience, so to speak. God, I hate that word, audience, but permit the word. It makes the poem so dear to me. So, Eating Alone by Lee Young Lee. This line is most poignant to me. It says, "It was my father I saw this morning waving to me from the trees." I like that. If you notice, the poems I've been reading, they have more to do with paying attention to what's going on around you. So those are the type of poems that mean the most to me, because he's looking at the trees and he's seeing his father. Mary Oliver, she was just taking a walk, and she saw the goldfinches who are calling you to pay attention. And the other poem, that's let's see, Walcott's poem was talking about the wren. And so now the final poem I'll be reading is by spectacular poet. I say spectacular poet, whatever. He is a spectacular poet. Samuel Adeyemi. November Ends. It's titled November Ends. This is the final poem I'll be reading and then wrap up. It is Harmattan again. The people I love, like the old trees, are distant or dying. I walk the boulevards outside the house, the air sharp, whitened by a dry cold. There is a loneliness inside the morning breeze. I can tell because it reaches for my wrists, wants to sit on skin like mist upon a hill. It is the same wet thing that weathers me. It clouds quietly inside a place I cannot name, such territory, the body. Often we seem to be visitors within its walls, as in, who knew you could hurt like that, little heart? Anyway, someone else has to teach the wind not to be lonely. I have been preoccupied learning what to do with the multitude of myself. I am thinking of less harmful ways to be alone. So far, the plot is going terribly bad. Even the music is some kind of knife. It doesn't wound, but it unwinds the wound. I know one thing is certain. I do not deserve my sadness. Forget the theory that the humble would never proclaim their humility. I am a good man. But we must be foolish if we think just for our goodness, the world must offer us any mercy. The wine that poisons the gold will poison the saints. And I think in spite of this, it is fair. Man, that's Adeyemi for you. So again, this poem is very attentive. I mean, it's a whole thesis in of itself, this poem by Adeyemi. It's a thesis. What I love most about the poem, however, is that the title of the poem, November Ends, really does make you think that November ends when you're reading the poem. The mention of the Harmattan, the mention of the trees, this also recalls the earlier poem that I read, the trees, seeing his father in the trees. So it's just, I don't know, certain poets have a way of bringing out the most profound aspects of life, of the things that are so important to us through just ordinary observations. And I hope to aspire, that's what I hope to get better at in my own work. And of course, there are other people some people, I just picked 4 poems from a folder. I have a folder called Favorite Poems. So I just picked 4 poems and I'm reading them. So you can imagine all the other awesome poets in there. So thank you for being with us. Poems I love. Hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.